Yesterday we learned that his company shares a mailing address with an international drug trafficker who's been busted for cocaine.
As I said yesterday, I don't know the person referred to in that article. I've never met that person. It's stated in the article, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
How come under this Prime Minister, a strong Indigenous woman gets fired for telling the truth when a weak, fake Indigenous man gets to keep his job after lying?
I'm going to ask the honourable member to withdraw the word fake, please.
I will withdraw the word fake and replace it with either sham, imitation, counterfeit.
A heated exchange, as you can hear there, in the House of Commons amid a growing controversy involving Liberal Cabinet Minister Randy Boissonnault. The Conservatives and now New Democrats are calling on the Employment Minister to resign. Just days ago, Boissonnault apologized for shifting claims regarding his family's Indigenous heritage going back nearly a decade. He first identified as non-status adopted Cree, but corrected himself last week to say his adoptive mother and brother were Métis. He's also facing scrutiny, though, for allegations that a company he formerly co-owned claimed to be Indigenous-owned when bidding for federal contracts in 2020. The Prime Minister said today that he's standing by his minister.
Minister Boissonnault has addressed these and will continue to answer directly for those. In the meantime, I'm happy that he is continuing to lead on issues around jobs and employment. The question of identity is an extremely delicate one for the federal government to weigh in on. It is much more important that Indigenous communities themselves make determinations around the framework and the rules they have.
We requested an interview with Minister Boissonnault for a fifth time since November 10th, and his office once again declined our request. With me now, live in studio, is NDP MP Blake Desjarlais. Hi, Mr. Desjarlais. Good to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
Of course. Pleasure to be here.
As this has all been unfolding, what's been going through your mind?
So many things. I had a real impact when I'd heard this information in my own family, my own community, people across Alberta, people in Edmonton Centre coming to me, telling me their stories of when they heard in their own time of him making false allegations like this in speeches, in meetings, in places. It gets worse because the fact is there's victims to this crime. There's victims to it, real people who do everything right. Indigenous companies do everything right. And these are folks that overcome significant barrier to then incorporate a company, sign the paperwork, do the hard job of trying to learn how to be part of this growing economy, and then find out that the system is rigged at the very top when it comes to programs and services that are meant to assist Indigenous people, like Indigenous procurement, which is simply meant to allow Indigenous companies to be part and parcel of the very important work that takes place here in Ottawa, that they are being shut out by a system that is mirrored in complex, very difficult and complex reality, but worse, it's subject to fraud, where we have instances where we have people in the name of Indigenous companies that are not Indigenous applying to this fund has a real victim. It's Indigenous companies that are no longer successful because they're being pushed out of the economy, they're being pushed out of opportunity, and they're being pushed out of what is another kind of systemic racism that persists here in Canada.
The minister has apologized. He has talked about there being confusion, his own confusion about his own heritage. He's acknowledged some of what you laid out there. Why do you think he should still resign?
He needs to resign because we need to show Canadians, we need to show those who are maybe thinking about pretending to be Indigenous, or those who are right now engaged in that kind of fraud, that we do not tolerate this. Earlier last year, there was 2 women who claimed falsely to be Inuk for the purpose of accessing scholarship money. These persons were found guilty, rightfully, sentenced to 3 years in prison. The fact that the Prime Minister is going to do a little slap on the wrist for the fact that we have someone in his cabinet who is pretending to be Indigenous, having his company say that they're wholly Indigenous owned when neither of the 2 company owners have said they're Indigenous, and then going today and saying that you're someone else than who you think you were, means to me that we need to come down in this country very hard in instances like this, because the consequence of not going and not having consequences to this means more pretendians, more people will start emerging, and they're going to learn that no one cares who's claiming to be Indigenous, and no one's checking, so why not I? That's the greatest risk that the Prime Minister is running here. He's saying to all those pretendians out there, if you commit identity fraud, it's A-okay. You won't even be kicked out of cabinet for those kinds of decisions.
Is it possible, in your view, that it is as he's presented it, that he didn't know what was going on with his business partner, that he, there was not malice behind it, that he wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't, he was just confused? Do you think that's possible, or do you think there's something more?
It's possible. The thing is, we don't know what's necessarily true here. The facts he's presented are consistently moving. The facts that he's telling us, I can't even understand day to day who he is. We don't know tomorrow who he's going to be. That's how difficult it is to ascertain facts in this case. However, there are many thousands of persons, particularly across the country in the prairies, that are Indigenous, that are seeking a reconnection with their community, that are doing the hard work of finding out who they are, how they may have been disconnected from their community, and truly reconnecting and doing that hard work. None of them have shifted their identity. They don't do that. This is a common and classic case, a first red flag of pretendianism, is when you shift your identity multiple times, especially since he had over a decade of time to do this reflection that now, when he's a cabinet minister, he's going to do. He should have done that reflection a long time ago, 10 years ago, when he said that he was going to do this. He should have done that before he applied for government contracts. He should have did that clearly with his business partner, who then went on to apply for a grant or for a procurement project while claiming it was wholly 100% Indigenous, when neither of them can confirm to us how they're Indigenous or if they're Indigenous. The issue can be one of malice, though. I believe that the issue between Mr. Boissonnault, his business partner, and their access to the procurement system may be serious malicious intent. But the work that and the claims he's made prior to that, those are something that he's going to have to reflect on. And he's going to have to know that there's a victim to what he's doing. This isn't just a victimless crime where you can say, oh, I put on a costume for a day and that's okay. We go really hard on Halloween, for example, when people pretend to be Native, because it hurts. It hurts to be seen as a stereotype. Mr. Boissonnault thought that he can use a stereotype in a different way. Rather than dressing up as a Native person, he dressed up an application and said he was someone he's not in order to get money. As a matter of fact, that's far worse when we're trying to use taxpayer dollars and gaining access to those taxpayer dollars on the backs of Indigenous people is outright harmful.
I just have time for one final question. You raise a number of other questions about what may be behind his motivation, also the connection to the water system of procurement. Mm-hmm. There are committees investigating both of these things separately, kind of. Is there another type of mechanism that you would like to see employed to get to the bottom of this? Yeah,
this is something I've been very clear with the Auditor General about. The Auditor General, I used to be on the Public Accounts Committee. I review the audits of the government. I've done a lot of the work on behalf of the New Democratic Party to uncover huge instances of scandal. It may seem at times that the Conservatives are the ones often doing this work, but we are also doing this work, and we're doing it in a serious way. We're doing it in a way where we read the documents, we investigate these issues. The Auditor General has been a huge part and parcel of much of this work. We need to see a national audit on Indigenous procurement. We need to have a third-party, independent office come to us with solutions that can manifest what it would be, hopefully, an end to this complete and utter failure of Indigenous Services Canada to monitor and appropriately account for who is accessing their Indigenous programs.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Mr. Desjarlais, I appreciate you making the time for the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
NDP MP Blake Desjarlais.